This is part 3 of the Tamiya Egress rebuild series. So as you can see, I took the front end off, took the front gearbox off, took everything apart, cleaned it out, and put it all back together. The gearbox is actually in pretty good shape, front and rear. There aren't any real cracks in it or anything. Slightly worn, but you know, what do you expect for a car this old? I did buy a fair amount of new parts. So Tamiya's Avanti truck, the Vajra, I think that's how you pronounce it. The front suspension arms and rear suspension arms are exactly the same as you would have for a Tamiya Egress. They're actually the same exact part number for the parts trees. So I just bought some new ones there just to have a nice fresh set of arms. I had to bend the front stabilizer bar because it was all bent out of shape. The front and I bought a set of front and rear universals, original, vintage, new in package, front and rear universals. They're typically hard to find. I got a really sweet deal on eBay. I won an auction, bought 2 pairs for $45. So that was a good steal. Let's see, what else did I do here? The front steering knuckles and C-hubs, these are for the Avanti 2011. So the stock C-hubs for the Egress are also, they're like a dark silver grayish color. They are metal. I believe they're aluminum. In pictures, they may look like they're plastic, but they are actually metal, and it looks like they're cast. So I was going to keep using those, but the problem is for the Egress, originally, the steering blocks are made of plastic, and the ones that I had that came with this chassis when I got it were broken. So I bought these nice alloy Avanti 2011 steering knuckles, but they don't fit quite so great with the stock Egress C-hubs. So I had to get Avanti 2011 C-hubs just to make the whole thing fit right. But there don't seem to be any problems with like the width of this. It seems to be compatible with the Egress, so no problems there. I did get some Tamiya red aluminum ball studs here. I did talk about these in another video. They're 6mm ball studs. They're round on one end, and they have sort of a flat base on the other end. They're threaded in the middle. They do mount very nicely on this. I have them also in the center here. Very pretty. I have some red lock nuts for the wheels, so those will look really nice when I get the black wheels on there. And what else did I do here? I think that's it. The differential for this is really interesting, and I just think it's a cool design, so I just want to show you what's interesting about it and how it's very different from differentials you might see in a modern RC car. So in a modern RC car, you would have basically a diff gear with, you know, your center diff balls that go in there. Then you'd have diff plates on either side with a thrust bearing that goes in with a screw that goes in through the center. Okay, the Egress has 2 thrust bearings, 1 thrust bearing for each side of the diff housing, and that thrust bearing has basically one little washer that's kind of like a spring, a very small space around the bottom, 0.05 millimeters, I think, and then the bottom plate for the thrust bearing, the top plate for the thrust bearing, then the other side of this plate feeds into the center balls. So this plate here is actually a plate for both the thrust balls and the center diff balls. And then these connect together. This little hex piece here actually is serrated in the center, and that's where your drive cups connect to. So this connects to this little guy here. That feeds into this, which drives this whole assembly. So if there is a weak spot to this, it's probably this bit here, because it is kind of small. It might strip or snap, but it appears to be pretty robust so far, at least when you put it together. What's interesting about this is that to tighten or loosen the diff, normally in a modern ball diff, you would just take the screw that screws in the thrust bearing and tighten it or loosen it with a hex drive or whatever kind of screw it is, you know, Phillips head or whatever. For this, you don't do that. What you actually do is there are these 3 screws here that screw both sides of the housing together. If you want to tighten or loosen the thrust bearings, you would just make these tighter or looser. Or what you can do is add washers to the bottom here to push this whole assembly up closer to the center part of the diff assembly. You got to be careful with how many washers you put in here, though. I accidentally put too thick of a washer in and then ended up snapping one of these plates here. So be very careful with that. But it appears that just when I was playing around with it, you can just tighten these up or loosen them, and that will make the diff a little tighter or looser. What's also nice about this is the whole thing is sealed. So when you install these drive cups, the thrust bearings are inside this housing here. There's no way that dirt's going to get in there. And for a modern ball diff, especially on RC10s, I have a couple RC10s myself, the thrust bearing can get dirty because it's kind of exposed to the elements. So you have to rebuild it every couple of race weekends. But this doesn't have that problem. And I just think it's a really cool design. So I just wanted to show you what that's like. The Avanti 2011 has gear diffs, just like the original Avanti. And the Black Special has ball diffs, but they're just normal ball diffs with 1 thrust bearing. So it's nothing like this. This is really cool. So I just wanted to show you that. And I do have the front finished. I actually ordered 2 sets of chassis plates. I ordered one from Pargu, an alloy chassis set. And I also ordered another set from Fiberlight. They are a British company that makes reproduction carbon fiber chassis for old Tamiyas and Yokomos and Kyoshos and all kinds of stuff. If you go to their website, they do have a database of the various models that they can make chassis for. The Tamiya Egress is not on their website, at least the last time I checked, but I did email their sales representative and they told me they do actually have the design for that, so they can reproduce it. He sent me a picture of the layout. It's exactly what I need. So I ordered that. You can get the upper and lower decks in 2 millimeters of carbon fiber with the little braces that go on the left and right side that the rear trailing arms mount to, and front and rear shock towers. I believe those are 3 millimeter carbon fiber. The whole set with shipping to the United States, it's about $150 US. That's a really good deal if you consider that it's pretty much impossible to find original Tamiya Egress carbon fiber chassis plates, and if you can, they're going to be a lot more money than that. So I look forward to receiving that. I look forward to receiving the Pargu parts and seeing, how they look. I'm only going to mount one on this. I'll probably mount the Fiberlight chassis on this because the Egress was originally a carbon fiber chassis. The Pargu set, I'm thinking of mounting it on my Avanti 2011, which is sort of my racing Avanti. My understanding is the Egress has a longer wheelbase than the Avanti. And so by mounting that Pargu set on the Avanti 2011, I can make the wheelbase a little longer, make it a little more stable. So I look forward to that. There is one more thing I also wanted to cover here, and that's this. So in part 2, I talked about rebuilding the front and rear shocks for these vintage high-cap dampers. And one problem I had was that I didn't have front springs of the right color. Now, you probably cannot find, or certainly Tamiya does not make these off-gold color springs for the rear. So you'd have to find those on eBay from somebody, or maybe get like the DFO3 gold springs, which isn't the right color, but it's sort of close. So you could do that. But for the fronts, it turns out that Tamiya does actually make off-gold front springs. Now, the thickness of this spring here is maybe a little thicker than what the original Egress had, but in terms of the color, it's a perfect match. And the part number is 58307. Front coil spring, I believe it's for the MO4 chassis. So, and it's a couple bucks. I got this from TQ Racing, this spring set here, and it was, I don't know, $3, $4. It's a lot cheaper than going on eBay and finding someone trying to milk you for 40 or 50 bucks just for 2 springs. So I just wanted to point that out. So now I have, a nice complete set of springs here. These rear springs, again, I'm not completely sure. They may or may not be the original springs. They don't have quite the right color, but it could be because the springs are old and aged. But anyway, they are nice. I do have, I'm running low C 25 weight oil in here, and these springs seem to work okay. It's not too stiff or anything. So that's it for now. I'll of course eventually do the same thing for the rear end of the chassis, and then put the whole thing together, and I'll make a few more videos. Okay, that's it.